that's must die. What's the use of worrying? It never was worthwhile.
Life in Letters by Tim Evans. 12th of January, 1916. Dearest Mother, as you must know, today is my final day on British soil before I leave with the newest recruits for France. My shock and fear after being conscripted for war has deserted me, and I now feel only excitement for the glory of which the upcoming conflict will surely bring. The resolve amongst the men is inspirational, with the power to send my courage soaring amid the rousing war songs. How I wish you could hear the raw passion in the men's voices, feel the electric tension in the air, and see the magnificent sight of 100,000 men lined up in regimented fashion. I understand the reasons why you fear for my safety in war, but I cannot emphasize enough that this must be God's plan for me. It is my duty, not only to my king and country, but to the heavens itself, that I must face the armies of Germany. If all I am is a pawn in a game of huge magnitude, then so be it. But with the motivation of protecting these white shores called home, what qualms can I have in laying down my life to protect those who are so dear to me? So it is in my fellow compatriots and God's own hands where I lay down my life. But I do so willingly, as there is nothing weaker than a man without resolve. Please console Sister as best you can, for I know she will not understand. Sending all my love to you.
16th of January, 1916. Dear Mother, on the 10th of January, I arrived here at my post as part of the 29th Regiment. Upon arriving, I was shocked to see the stark harshness of the battlefield. Trenches walled with sandbags and soil provide us with our foundation systems. They travel across the fields in a jagged pattern stretching for miles. Although the conditions inside are shockingly cramped and ridden with grime, it's an insignificant hardship when compared to the reason why we are out here. However, the very battleground we fight on is a horrifying mess of black, muddy wasteland. Layers upon layers of rusted barbed wire strewn with bodies of the dead cover the ground, whilst craters the size of houses seem to appear at random will. Artillery barrages and gunfire are all the ear can hear, whilst the sky is tainted with smoke and flying shells. Carrion crows litter the area, searching for a source of food that is only too readily available. It truly is the creation of a hellish nightmare. After arriving at the front line with the intentions of adding reinforcements to the current division on guard, the amalgamations of our units was smooth, yet eerie. I couldn't understand why, but the men we joined, their eyes seemed distant and hollow, empty, as if completely devoid of life. It truly was a creation of a hellish nightmare. Graham, the most boisterous member of our division, attempted to converse with a few of the veteran soldiers, but their response was always the same, sullen and irritable, to the point of hostility.
"22nd of January, 1916. Dear Mother, I'm struggling with the concept of this war being glorious and heroic. There is no questioning the worthiness of our cause, but the conditions in which we are fighting are abysmal. Hygiene in the trenches is poor to the extent of making them uninhabitable. From an infestation of germ-spreading rats to the damp conditions inside the trench, there is scarcely a man among us who is free from illness or infection. I myself have developed a common condition known as trench foot, which gives me agony every time I move. But with the near steady stream of soldiers being sent to field hospitals, a single man with a mild infection is hardly the highest concern facing our army. Many men take these burdens as a memento of the hardship of war on the way to glory. But the idea that a glorious war should be spent hunched in a bunker, afraid of peeking your head over the parapet in fear of a bullet hitting you between the eyes, is preposterous. War should be without fear or doubt. It should be every man reciting his cause as he charges into the arms of the enemy. It should be the open determination and high morale in the face of death. But there are no heroic charges against the enemy, and nobody openly celebrates our cause. When we first arrived, every man had a patriotic speech on the tip of his tongue, and now silence envelops the men on duty, only to be partially relieved when moved away from the front lines. Our spirits are not low as such, just dampened by the miserable conditions. And the rumors. The newest reinforcements have, as of yet, been spared from bloodshed. But rumors from other regiments speak of death on a mass scale. Whispers of clouds of death that tear a man from the inside out. And the power of exploding shells that rip men apart are truly terrifying visions. Scenarios we all hope to avoid. However, I have no concern for being out here for your safety. Missing you all.
24th of January 1916. Dear Mother, I scarcely know how to begin this letter to you, for I'm filled with so many emotions and feelings. Blood and death have finally appeared before my very eyes. Graham is now just another figure, added to the great number of men who never made it home. Perhaps it was the cruel hands of fate that conspired against him, or the vengeful wrath of a supreme being pulling the strings to conspire his death. During patrol along the trenches, a single bullet exploited a gap between sandbags as he passed by. As the events transpired against him, I watched in helpless horror as the metal round smote him. I swear for the remainder of my life I will never forget the great multitude of emotions that flashed across his face as he crumpled. Surprise and confusion as he began to fall, followed by the harsh sting of agony splayed over his writhing body as he floundered in the dirt. The fear in which he stared chilled my blood, as his own flowed freely over the ground. Despite his obvious pain, he said nothing, took his own death in silence, like a warrior of old. Yet there was nothing close to resembling glory in the cruel way that his life was snuffed out. For a few seconds, absolute silence filled the air, for the first time in a fortnight. His death has affected us in such a deep psychological way that it has changed my very perspective on life. I can feel myself wearing down more and more every hour, as still his bloodied arm desperately reaches out to me. The knowledge that death could knock at the door of any of these men at any time leaves me feeling empty and bitter. Only now can I begin to understand how those men we replaced weeks ago were feeling and why. Patriotism out here is as much a myth as the notion that this war is filled with glory and honor. I find it hard to fight for a country whose soldiers die in such brutal conditions, unrecognized for their worth or bravery. Every life out here is individual and different. Every man has his own point of view on life, his own moral constitution, and his own hopes. When so much potential is lost for the sake of a few miles of worthless wasteland, it makes you wonder whether there's any true justice in life. The extent this experience has changed me is so dramatic that now I begin to question my own identity. He once described me as being happy-go-lucky, but instead of seeing any happiness in my life, all I see is misery in watching comrades, in watching heroes cut down around me. I feel as if there is a great weight pressing down upon me, trying to break my wavering resolve. No. I will endure and see out my duty to the very end, with love.
31st of January, 1916. Mother, I can barely cope out in the cold wilderness of these killing fields. Death, it appears, has found our division and scarcely allows any respite against its malicious touch. Whether it's bullets, shells, or gas, the result is all the same. Meaningless fear and devastation on so many young faces. I used to imagine what life would be like when I returned home. I always pictured huge crowds lining the streets we would walk through. Union Jacks flying as banners of our victory, whilst bugles sang fanfare after fanfare, heralding our glorious return. Roses, as red as the blood we shed, would be strewn along cobbled streets, and we, the soldiers, who have risked everything for the very crowds now cheering our names, will be crowned in eternal glory. I now realize that this is a mere fantasy that will never come to pass. There may be celebrations galore for the few survivors who make it back. But what will those soldiers feel? Only the memories of witnessing countless men die before them will haunt their dreams, and memories of fear and betrayal will be branded into their hearts. For how can we feel anything but betrayal at those who sent us here, knowing that all we are doing is waiting out here to die? The future holds only suffering for us soldiers who, for no reward whatsoever, will pay the ultimate price for you. When one hears of a journey, it rarely goes unaccompanied by a happy ending or the psychological growth of a person. My own anguished journey is surely owed the happy ending that this odyssey deserves. But there can be no tomorrow for a man broken beyond repair. Broken under the terror of war, I've become a dwindling mess. I feel so much older, but no wiser. My sanity wavering to the point of collapsing. While many journeys are positive, journeys in war are never so. There is no victory for soldiers who have had their spirit and soul crushed beyond repair. It is a fate worse than death to be affected in such a way. And that has been the very nature of my short journey. Misery. That is the nature of war. There is no grandeur in the honorable fight, and there is no beauty in death. I wish I could go home. But I have come to realize that I will never be at peace until I have left this world, for that is my final destination.
16th of February, 1916. My family. It's dark. Not the type of dark that veils you from the world, but rather the type that cloaks the world from you. And when that dark shrouds a swarm of stinging bullets in its murk, what differentiates the dark from death itself? Yes, death is the dark. Darkness has taken better men than me. They spasm with flailing limbs and choked breath as they fall into shadow. Pure fear replacing the fire once raging so keenly in their eyes. How did it come to this? As I defend this hole in Flanders, there is naught to do but to wait, reflecting on my meaningless existence and the letters from a journey that will never return home. For there is only a matter of time before the dark finds me.
Noche por